Welcome to the Beantown podcast. This is your host with the most, Quinn David Furness, coming to you live from 817 St. Paul Street here in beautiful yet chilly Beantown, USA, Baltimore, Maryland. How is everyone? What's going on? What's happening? My name is Quinn David Furness, and I am the host of this show, the Beantown podcast, the People's Podcast, one of Baltimore City's top 500 podcasts, and you can take that to the bank. We are coming to you live in the new year, 2019, our first live podcast of 2019, January 12th, Saturday. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, who supported the Year One special. I myself have been working my way through it. I haven't sat down in one sitting yet and listened to all of it. It's 4.5 hours. It's a big chunk to get through, but I hope everyone appreciates that. In the description, in both YouTube and everywhere else, we have the time next to the start of each different clip or story. So I think that should be helpful for you. I had a lot of fun making it, and it was a lot of fun putting it together. So there you have it. But we are coming to you live now for the first time in 2019, back at 817 St. Paul Street. Have not podcasted from 817 St. Paul Street since, oh man, it's probably been a month, because I'm thinking we're going back here. Year One special last week. Year before that. Well, technically that's true. I didn't even mean to say that. That was a dad pun. Week before that was our West Virginia special. The week before that, we came to you live from Texas. The week before that, we came to you live from New York. Week before that, we came to you live from, we were in Beantown, but we were at our holiday season correspondent Megan's house, talking about palindromes and such. So it's been a solid over a month. I think, 5 shows since we've been coming to you live from the homestead. It's good to be back. It's good to be home. I put my iPod Shuffle or my iPod Nano into shuffle mode today. And you know what came up first song? Chris Daughtry. I'm coming home to the place where I belong. Listener discretion is advised when you are listening to the Beantown podcast. Number 1, we will occasionally use some adult language here on this podcast, although it's sparse and few in between. Number 2, this podcast is objectively terrible. New year, same old listener discretion is advised tag. That's what you love about the Beantown podcast, consistency. Don't forget, when you are talking about the Beantown podcast on social media, use the hashtag friends of the podcast. Not friends of podcasts, not friends like you're talking about Quakers, friends of the podcast. That's the hashtag. You can find us on Twitter at BeantownCast. We're on Facebook. Of course, we're an email, right? We're big into tech these days, 21st century, 2019. beantownpodcast@yahoo.com. I'll say it again for the brothers in the back. Beantownpodcast, BEANTV podcast @yahoo.com. I want to thank a dear listener and a close friend of the podcast who actually emailed us early on in 2019. I would like to read that message live on air. It's nice. So for those of you who don't know, maybe you're new to the podcast, new year, new podcast, we don't get a ton of mail in the inbox. A lot of it is junk, spam, Expedia offers, etc., etc. But we got a nice email here from a dear friend. I want to read it live on the air. We got his permission to do it. Let's get started with that. Dear friend, my name is Mr. Rock Chris. Not Chris Rock, mind you, Rock Chris. And I am a banker by profession. Already a good start. I love money. I hail from Ouagadougou. Apologies to all my African friends. Burkina Faso, West Africa. It's a country. Ouagadougou is the capital city. Learned that when I was young. My reason for contacting you is to transfer and abandon 10.5 million, 10,500,000 United States, 10,500,000, is that right? 10,500,000. Well, 10.5 would be 10,500,000. I don't know about your banking credentials there, Mr. Rock Chris, but let's continue to your account. Before I introduce myself more, I wish to inform you that this letter is not a hoax mail. Well, that calms my nerves, frankly, and I urge you to treat it serious. I'm reading it on one of Baltimore City's top 500 podcasts. Of course it's serious. This letter must come to you as a big surprise. Yes, because I don't get a lot of mail in the Beantown Podcast, yahoo.com, but you can change that. But I believe it is only a day that people meet and become great friends and business partners. Now, right there, my admissions ears perk up because this guy's writing / English ability, syntax, grammar, onomatopoeia, all that good stuff, maybe not the strongest. I'll read that sentence again. But I believe it is only a day that people meet and become great friends and business partners. Sounds more like a Bible verse than anything else, but let's continue here. The owner of this fund died since on May 5th, 2003. Now, that's a damn shame. May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, big holiday here in the Americas. I don't know much about West Africa. I would assume Day of the Dead, Halloween, Cinco de Mayo, all big things over there as well. Dying on May 5th, that's almost as bad as like dying on your birthday or dying on Christmas or Easter, ironically, because that's all about rising from the dead. But you know, let's continue with his next of kin, all in caps, next of kin. I appreciate that. I want to present you to the bank as the next of kin, again in all caps, / beneficiary of this fund. Further details of the transaction shall be forwarded to you as soon as I receive your return mail indicating your interest. Have a great day, with a period. Now in parentheses, all caps, fill this form bellow. So bellow, Bellow. Isn't that the thing? It's got, two handles and whoosh, say that noise again. Whoosh, into the fire to stoke it. Before they had fire stokers, they had bellows. Fill this form bellow, please, and resend it to me. Okay, information that Mr. Rock Chris, dear friend of the podcast, # friends of the podcast. Your full name, your sex, that's private, mister. Your age, your country, your occupation, your personal mobile number. I say mobile because West Africa colonized by the British. They say mobile instead of mobile. Mobile, Alabama. Anyone ever been there? Let us know in an email if you have. Looking forward for your immediate response. Regards, Mr. Rock Chris. So I email Mr. Rock Chris back. Haven't heard anything yet. I assume he was so taken aback by hearing from Quinn David Furness, host, owner, creator, and best boy of the Beantown Podcast, that he probably has been in a coma for days, just saying, wow, to all his West African brothers, I made it. We made it, bros. So thank you to Mr. Rock Chris, dear friend of the podcast, for tuning in to the show every weekend, leaving us a kind email. Of course, you can always find us, beantownpodcast@yahoo.com, but we've already gone through that stuff. All right. What are we going to be talking about today? Well, it's been a cold couple of weeks here in Beantown. We're having some okay times running. I'll say that. So I've been good. I've been consistent with the running. Been trying to get into it more. Maybe try and do a race of some kind in 2019. I took 2018 off from races. No races of any kind. Oh, hang on. Something's happening. Something's going on with my phone here. It's freezing up. But I think I've told the story of running the Marine Corps Marathon. But, hang on. Let's see. We're getting a call here. Hey, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, Edward, you're live on the Beantown Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing...
Okay, there we go.
What's going on?
No, nothing. It was just, I thought you were on speaker, but you weren't, so, yeah.
Okay. Hey, how's Tucson?
Tucson is Tucson, you know.
What does that mean?
I mean, like in the summer, it's basically like two suns.
Two suns. I like that. Hey, you know Star Wars and Tatooine, they have two suns.
I know. I don't watch Star Wars a lot, but I do went through all of them.
You're the biggest Star Wars fan I know. What are you talking about?
Say what?
What's happening? It's after midnight. What are you doing awake?
It's not after midnight. It's like 10:30 here. So I'm not doing anything, but just like watching videos online, streaming, actually browsing.
Anything good?
No, not really.
Sounds like a wild Friday night. Why aren't you hitting the clubs?
I don't go to clubs. I never drink. I don't drink at all. Like at all.
You are a very pious man.
What does that supposed to mean?
Pious means holy, well kept, decent, etc.
Yeah, that might not be correct.
Sounds like you have some good stories you want to share.
Maybe. What kind of story do you want to hear?
Oh, probably your craziest night in college.
So I wouldn't call it crazy, but it was not quite. Let's call it the worst night in college.
That's worst crazy. I'll take anything.
Right. So I was in a club. I was on the board. And we're supposed to host these training sessions and do one of these competitions for the members, and we separated them into teams so they can compete against each other, right? So, as the board member, you're supposed to be the mentor that try to help these rookie members go through all sort of practice. Now, that's kind of the backstage. Then what happened is my members weren't really cooperating, and they weren't talking, and we were supposed to finish this competition task. Like, let's put it this way: when you're supposed to finish before the deadline, so you can have time to practice and rehearse and then revise, right? But what they did is they didn't talk or do anything at all, so we have to rush the whole thing within a couple hours, which was designed for a couple weeks. Besides that, I also have my own stuff because, I'm a student too, and as things go up to junior and senior, your courses get harder and your projects are harder as well. So I spent over 30 hours straight in the library at school, not the library, but I did spend like 10 hours in the library. So I spent like 30 hours more at school. And I didn't sleep, didn't quite eat a lot. And it was almost finals week, and so things were even worse. Yeah.
How much Red Bull did you drink?
I didn't drink any Red Bull.
How much cocaine did you do?
I don't do anything.
So why was this the worst night?
Were you listening?
I'm just saying, hey, in college, there was a night when I took 10 shots of tequila and had an Adderall pill. And I tell you what, that was wild, and I also didn't sleep that night. But that sounds way worse than sitting in the library doing homework.
No, it's not sitting in the library doing homework. It's trying to guide these people who supposed to show up with things ready, but end up showing up with nothing ready.
I would like to remind you of a passage that our dear friend Mr. Jones taught us growing up. Teach a man to fish, and you will feed him for a day, but teach a man to fish, and you will feed him for a week.
Yeah, but the problem is before you actually teach him before he manage fishing, he would be starved to death. So you need to teach him, provide him both fish and fishing.
I'm glad you brought up fish because it brings me to a topic that I wanted to touch on. Fish tacos here, big thing in Tucson, big taco scene in general. I know you're a taco man, so where are we going to find the best tacos in Tucson?
There are a lot of Mexican taco truck that were not exactly a restaurant. It's like a food truck that drives around day and night, and usually they provide the best tacos you can find.
Like an ice cream truck for tacos.
Yeah, but they do have a fixed location for the night, so people can actually go and buy at a one location.
So which one's your favorite?
They are not much of difference. They have similar materials, similar manual, similar taste. I think it might be different for a person who didn't grow or who didn't try taco in Tucson, but here there weren't really much of a difference.
Did you say they have a similar manual?
Yeah.
You need a manual to eat your tacos?
No, not manual. A menu.
Menu.
Yeah. Similar menu, but they call it different names, just because it's different people who are running. But essentially, it's the same thing.
Very good. Very good. I'm glad you called on while we were doing the podcast because I've been meaning to get an answer to this question for a long time, and I just figure you're the man for the job since you're the math genius here. So, Train A is traveling 70 miles per hour, leaves Karachi, heading toward Baghdad.
Karachi?
Yeah, it's in Pakistan. Karachi.
Okay.
It's heading northwest towards Baghdad, which is approximately 1,700 miles away. So it's going 70 miles an hour. At the same time, Train B, traveling 60 miles per hour, leaves Baghdad heading southeast towards Karachi. When do the two trains meet, and how far from each city do they meet?
Okay, that's actually a very interesting question.
Well, we ask very interesting questions on the Beantown podcast.
Do you? Sure, let's see. Hey, are you still here?
Yes, in your answer, please show your work.
All right. So typically, when you do math problems like this, you will consider the approaching velocity of these trains would be 70 plus 60 because they are moving towards each other. So we know the full distance is 1,700 miles, right?
Yeah, we said they are 1,600 miles apart.
Oh, 16, never mind. So train A is traveling 70 miles per hour, and train B is traveling 60 miles per hour, which makes the approaching velocity 130 because they are moving towards each other, just like I said. So if we divide the distance, which is 1,600 miles 1,600 miles between two cities, by the velocity, which is 130 miles per hour, we'll get around 12 hours and around like 15 minutes. So if they start at the same time and start driving at the speed that you described, they should meet after 12 hours and 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, so second part of the question, how far from each city do they meet?
Right. Hold on a second. So, train A that was leaving from where?
Train A is leaving from Karachi.
Karachi will be around 860 miles away from Karachi. And train B will be where did it come from?
Baghdad.
Baghdad?
Yeah, it's in Iraq.
Okay, I know, but that's a weird name. So train B will be around 740 miles away from Baghdad. Assume everything that's going constant and nothing like somebody want to jump off or catch up. Assuming they're not stopping for stations.
You're a freaking genius, man.
I know, right? That's what I do. I freak people out.
Do you have any reflections on love and life and passion?
On what?
Love and life and passion.
Wild life and passion?
Yes.
No. Not really. I mean, for me, I've always tried to keep myself calm and not doing anything wild. I don't see, but the problem, my point is, one shouldn't just try to go with whatever hits their head, but rather to evaluate and make a rational decision instead of going wild and crazy, which will work sometimes, but in the most case, that might not give you the result that you want.
That's pretty deep.
If I understand your question correctly.
Oh, I think we're on cloud 9, baby.
What's that? I don't understand your metaphor.
That's okay. In our hearts, we understand each other.
Do we?
Last question for you. If Mr. Jones was sitting here right now, what would you say to him?
I would say thank you very much because he really showed me a different lifestyle that I would never did or I would never be able to accomplish on my own. And he also brought a lot of good stuff, including the Christian knowledge and the Christian beliefs, which were very much different than I had. It's very much different than I thought, and it's of course very much different than what I used to live. Although I'm not a believer, but I do have. I do think his belief is based on a rational decision.
Fair enough. Well, Edward, I tell you what, do you have any spiritual food that you want to leave us with?
Nah, not really. Not this time. You're not driving me around, providing me free gas, so, yeah. Well, if we ever had a chance, I would definitely visit you in Baltimore. Then you can drive me around. Then I can feed you some spiritual food.
Only if you buy me a car first.
Do you not have a car?
No.
What do you do? Do you walk? Do you run? Do you ride a bike?
I walk. I run. I take the bike. The bus. Excuse me. I eat tacos. I drink beer. I see movies. I live my life.
I don't know what to say, but okay, I'll buy you a car. Like, I will buy you a scooter.
No, I don't want a scooter. I want a Hummer.
That's not gonna happen. Like, ever.
I'm frustrated.
Dude, I tell you what. If this show goes well and you are able to expand it to like international basis, like China or Japan or whatever, I will buy you a car.
I have listeners in Canada.
That's like the 51st state.
No, that's Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico? Okay, Canada is 52nd.
I think if you go to Canada and say that, they will shoot you.
But I'm here in Arizona, so they can't shoot me from there.
Wait till they cross the border. They will come get you.
Not until they defeat the people in Utah, and then they might have a chance. But I'll just go back to China,
That's always a safe bet. You have better walls over there.
Yeah, let's not make it political.
Okay, anything else you want to add before we end here?
Well, I hope you're enjoying your life. You were kind of my best friend in high school, so I do hope you're doing well. You're doing well, and as much as I know you are, so I'm happy for you. That's one. Second, you need to visit me in Tucson someday, or whenever I end up next, or if you have a chance.
Well, those are very kind words. I appreciate you saying that, and I thank you for coming on the podcast. And next time I've never been to Tucson, but if I get the chance, you can take me to get some tacos, and I'll teach you some spiritual food.
All right, that's fair. Fair enough.
By the way, your Facebook picture is about 10 years old.
Facebook? I don't update Facebook.
Oh, you're on Facebook all the time? You're always posting and tweeting and chatting?
I transformed, yeah, but that's just to share my life, but instead of, actually doing something meaningful.
Sounds like a good replacement.
Yeah. I'm probably gonna change my photo or update it, but I'm mostly on Instagram and LinkedIn right now because, I study business, and LinkedIn is apparently the Facebook for business people. I don't know.
You're so professional.
Professional, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are you gonna go play some Fortnite, or what are you gonna do?
Well, I don't play Fortnite because I don't have the equipment to do so, and I think I watch people streaming on Fortnite. That's very much like Overwatch.
I've never played either. I don't really know them.
Okay, then why are you bringing this up? Are you trying to impress
Well,
me?
just trying to make friendly conversation.
Oh, your accent your accent changed so much since you've moved to Baltimore.
What are you talking about? This is how I always talk.
No, you have this Eastern Boston.
No, there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing Boston about me except I host the Beantown podcast.
Yes, exactly. When you say Beantown podcast, it's like the Boston podcast.
No, they're completely different.
I don't think so. It's like you're literally it feels like I'm talking to somebody else. It's like you have the same voice, but your accent is so different.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, see, you never talked like this before. It's like a different guy. Did you hit puberty again?
It's time for bed.
All right, okay. We'll draw the line here.
Okay, I hope you find some better online videos.
All right, you too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Wow. Jeez. You never know what you're going to get on the Beantown podcast. Sometimes you're just recording and we get friends of the podcast calling on. That's what's great about the podcast. All for one, one for all, a truly democratic, liberty-inducing experience. Anybody who wants a voice can have a voice on the Beantown podcast. Speaking of which, I'm not ready to announce it tonight, but hopefully next week or the week after, we will be announcing our donor tiers for the Pledge Drive fundraiser telethon annual event coming up in February. That should be a lot of fun. So look out for those. Big thanks to Edward for calling in. Been talking on Facebook lately. Said, hey, let's get me on the Beantown podcast. A lot of things I want to share. So Edward talked us through tacos and trains leaving Baghdad and Karachi and I don't know, something else in 20 minutes. But it was a good time and always fun to have friends of the podcast, whether you are Rock Chris or whether you are Edward, coming on the podcast. Let's read some advertisements here. Home Pride, Oregon. Are you tired of selling your house for less than a quarter of what it's worth, all because you couldn't find a reliable home inspector in time? Well, Oregon listeners, there's good news. Home Pride Inspection Services in Bend, Oregon is Central Oregon's hottest new home inspection provider with inspection services including things like heating and cooling, roofing, plumbing, and so much more. Home Pride Oregon is both contractor certified and home inspection certified, so you know you're getting the good stuff. If you're tired of big real estate stranglehold on the home inspection market and you want a safe, certified home inspector you can trust, call Steve at 541-207-1101 or visit homeprideoregon.com. That's 541-207-1101 or visit homeprideoregon.com. Home Pride Oregon. Inspection perfection. All right. Well, we are getting into the wee hours of Friday night, Saturday morning. It's about 1 a.m. I'm thinking time to wrap it up. Time for bedtime. Let's see. Anything else on the Beantown podcast that I wanted to update for everyone? I think everyone's good on the schedule. January, pretty calm, which is great because December was a lot of fun, but it was crazy. I mean, we were in New York, Texas, West Virginia, Maryland, Virginia doing the editing process. So, honestly, it's really nice to just be taking a load off. But that's the thing about the Beantown podcast. There are no weeks off. It doesn't matter where you are, how busy your work is, your real work that you get paid for. Beantown podcast doesn't take time off. And that's my dedication to you, the listeners. There is no off season for the podcast. Even, LeBron James or any number of other athletes get an off season. But there is no off season for the Beantown podcast. So let's see. I think that just about wraps up everything. Next week, I'm going to be running down a list of my favorite movies from 2018. It's a list that I've been meaning to get out to a couple different people, but I figure it'd be fun to share on the podcast as well. I do take my movie recommendations and lists very seriously, so I'm really looking forward to developing that. I have a lot of just hard work and thinking to go to decide what I want to put on my list for 2018 movies. That should be really exciting. I saw a lot of movies, so I've got plenty to choose from. Okay, I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up here. There were a couple other things I wanted to touch on, but they are escaping my mind right now. I should have written them down. What happened was I was in the theater hours before this watching If Beale Street Could Talk, the Barry Jenkins movie from the James Baldwin novel. And while I was watching, I had all these great ideas for things I wanted to touch on the show here tonight. But we ended up getting Edward calling in to talk about love, life, and passion and physics. And then we got everything else going on. And next thing you know, things are escaping my mind. So don't forget to use hashtag Friends of the Podcast when you're talking about the Beantown Podcast. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, retweet, whatever you want to do. We are everywhere where you find podcasts, unless or somewhere where you don't find your podcast. Once again, this has been Quinn David Furness. I am the host, creator, mixer, best boy, electrician, cinematographer, editor, caterer, even, of the Beantown podcast. Maybe we'll check in on you this weekend, live stream. I've been listening to some more Michael McDonald. One thing that I wanted to mention. It's a big idea. It's one of my biggest ideas yet. But I think I could pull it off if I just give myself a lot of time and set really low expectations. I'm thinking of writing a memoir. Yeah, that's a memoir. And I had this was all sparked. I was reading a college essay this week, and or a letter of recommendation from a counselor about a student, saying that this student has faced a lot of adversity in their time. This is a West Virginia student. So, wow, you know what? I already messed it up. The whole bit is off, although this isn't a bit. It's true. The student has faced a lot of diversity in their time as a student, and that was seen as, I assume they just misused diversity in place of adversity. But I tell you what, I'm thinking of writing a memoir, calling it Facing Diversity. I think we could put a really cool picture like of my face, maybe like arms crossed at the table. You're thinking, wow, this is going to be a great 21st postmodernism study in race, religion, politics, sex, and gender. Wow, Quinn, you're just like the leading expert on this stuff. And then you get into it, next thing you know, it's a memoir about Quinn David Furness, and it's comedical, it's funny, it'll have you splitting your pants laughing, peeing your pants too. So there's the big idea. It's not a year 2 project. It's happening over time, but I tell you what, I got the first step out of the way, opened a Google Doc today to start collecting thoughts and ideas. I think I've got a lot to write about. I'm turning 24 in 2 months here. They call that turning the corner, pretty much halfway to death. So we got that to look forward to, but okay, that's all we wanted to say. I'm uploading this and I'm going to bed. Long day, long story short. This has been Quinn David Furness. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to year 2 of the Beantown podcast. You never know what you're going to get, whether it's tacos in Tucson or writing memoirs or same old Home Pride, Oregon. So everyone, have a great week. Don't forget to email us if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or grievances. Tweet at us, all that good stuff. Share the podcast if you like what you hear, if you think it's funny, or if you just want to get me blacklisted, whatever you need to do. Everyone, have a good time. Safe weekend. I'll check in on you next week.